This lecture is on the field of epistemology. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that investigates the nature, sources, limitations, and validity of knowledge. Epistemology presents us with the task of explaining how we know what we claim to know. Everything we claim to know amounts to little if we can't support our claims. Explaining what the necessary conditions for knowledge are. What makes a belief knowledge? Explaining how we can find out what we wish to know. Explaining how we can judge someone else's claim to knowledge. Explaining the difference between justified and unjustified belief. When should I believe what I'm told? How much justification is needed for a belief to count as knowledge? Good epistemology can help us understand the world around us.
How do we acquire reliable knowledge? What is the source or basis of our knowledge? Empiricism is the view that knowledge can be attained only through sense experience. The senses include hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. Some examples of what we learn through the senses are that the sky is blue, trees are green, lemons taste sour, water is wet, fire alarms are loud, as well as our knowledge of the natural sciences. Rationalism says that reason is the key source of our knowledge, and we do not rely completely on our senses for the knowledge we have.
According to empiricism, the human mind contains nothing except for what sense experience is put there. Some examples of empiricists are John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. According to Locke, the mind is a blank slate on which experience makes its mark. Rationalists believe we don't rely completely on our senses for all the knowledge we have. However, rationalists also don't necessarily hold that all our knowledge is acquired through reason alone. Rationalists believe that some of our knowledge is acquired without our senses alone. Some examples of knowledge rationalists typically believe we receive that is not empirical would be knowledge of infinity, knowledge of the laws of logic, and knowledge of universal concepts. Some examples of rationalists would be René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, Gottfried Leibniz. Within the rationalist worldview, how does the mind arrive at knowledge without the senses? Rationalists will typically appeal to innate ideas. Innate ideas are ideas that are present in the mind from birth. Rationalists say we could not have acquired the content that is contained within innate ideas by observation because our experience of the world is too limited. Universal concepts like truth, God, the laws of logic, mathematical principles, infinity, cannot be empirically sensed. A question that epistemologists investigate is, what is knowledge? The traditional view of knowledge is that knowledge is a justified, true belief. In order for someone to have knowledge of something, that person must believe it. If someone doesn't believe something, it can't be known. In order for someone's belief about something to be constituted as knowledge, that belief must be justified. A belief is justified when you have enough evidence or reasons for that belief. A belief can't merely be a matter of luck to count as true knowledge. For example, an elderly man guessing lotto numbers based on the color tie the host is wearing and somehow manages to get the numbers correct by luck. The elderly man did not truly know what the correct lotto numbers were. His belief was not appropriately justified. We have beliefs from a wide variety of causes, like desires, emotional needs, prejudices, biases of various kinds. Even if true beliefs come from these sources, they don't count as knowledge. It is necessary our beliefs originate in sources we have good reason to consider reliable in order for what we believe to be considered knowledge. But what sources are considered reliable sources for knowledge? Can we trust perception? How do we know it's reliable? The senses deceive us. It may not truly be coffee in front of me. It may only seem like coffee in front of me because my perception is faulty. Can we trust memory? How do I know I wasn't being duped in the past by false memories? Just because I remember an experience, it doesn't mean what I experienced really happened the way I thought it did. People remember things differently. For all I know, the Earth came to existence 5 minutes ago, and I was given false memories. Can we trust introspection? Introspection is the capacity to inspect the inside of our mind. Introspection can give us an infallible glimpse into the way things appear and sense to us, but not give us certainty about objects that exist independently of us. Can we trust reason? How exactly can we trust it? People come to different conclusions through reasoning. How do we grasp all bachelors are unmarried? By intuition? Do we trust reason due to reliable cognitive processes? Can we trust testimony? Ordinary utterances, blog postings, articles by journalists, radio, TV, tapes, books, other media? It's a source of knowledge if it is coming from a reliable source. But what constitutes a reliable source? A belief must not only be justified to be constituted as knowledge, a justified belief must also somehow correspond to reality. It must be true. A justified belief and a true belief are different. Just because a belief is strongly justified, that doesn't make it true. Justification points to the truth of something, but justification doesn't guarantee a belief's truth. A belief is true when the belief corresponds to some reality. You have knowledge that there is lightning outside, not only because you believe it is lightning due to hearing the rain and thunder, but also because there truly is lightning outside. False beliefs can't be known. Knowledge requires truth. A theory of how we should structure the way we justify our beliefs in knowledge is foundationalism. A distinction between basic beliefs and non-basic beliefs is made in foundationalism. A basic belief is not justified by other beliefs. A non-basic belief is justified by other beliefs. Foundationalist philosophers believe that our non-basic beliefs are founded on our basic beliefs. So my non-basic belief that it is rainy outside is based on my basic belief that there is a pitter-patter sound outside. A criticism of foundationalism is that there are no basic beliefs we can know for certain that we could use as basic beliefs to ground non-basic beliefs. What's chosen as a basic belief is arbitrary and lacks further justification. For example, the basic belief there is a pitter-patter sound coming from outside, or there are drops of water on the windowsill, are not truly firm foundations to begin our knowledge of something, like that it's raining outside. The pitter-patter sound and the drops of water that appear to be on the windowsill could be part of a hallucination or dream.
Another discipline within the field of epistemology is phenomenology. Phenomenology is the study of what appears before our subjective consciousness. Within phenomenology, the natural standpoint is contrasted with what we can know through the epoché. The natural standpoint is our normal awareness of the external world spread out in space and time as something that objectively exists out there. People usually assume the natural standpoint towards the world. This consists in being aware of a world around us that is simply there, whether or not we pay attention to it. Occasionally, this world differs from what we suppose it is. However, we still assume a world that is out there. Phenomenologists will encourage us to move away from the natural standpoint to the epoché. The epoché is the suspension of our judgment of the natural standpoint. Phenomenologists will ask us to bracket the natural standpoint by suspending our judgment of whether the external world we experience really exists out there. This is done to focus our attention on our inner conscious experience. Phenomenologists see this bracketing, far from leaving us with skepticism and ignorance, as presenting important truths. These truths are important because whatever remains after bracketing is certain. What remains after bracketing is the truth that we are conscious and that we are conscious of things. For example, if you have dice in front of you, you can deny the dice exists, but you cannot deny that you are experiencing the subjective sensation of feeling and seeing dice. Phenomenology has been used within foundationalist understandings of knowledge. Phenomenological statements are used as basic beliefs that are used to ground non-basic beliefs. So an example of a non-basic belief: there is a hand in front of me. How do we justify the belief that there is a hand in front of me? I can't know for certain if there's a hand in front of me. However, I am certain that I am experiencing the sensation of a hand that appears to be in front of me. So my basic belief: I sense the subjective visible sensation of a hand. I don't know if my hand is really there or if it's an illusion. But this phenomenological basic belief grounds my non-basic belief that there is a hand in front of me.
So far, we have been discussing the correspondence theory of truth. The correspondence theory of truth is when a statement is true when it corresponds to reality. The coherence theory of truth says beliefs are true if they consistently cohere with my other beliefs. Beliefs are untrue if they cannot fit into the system or web of beliefs. Our beliefs justify each other in a type of circle. Justification is circular. Thus, a new belief is true if it coheres with other beliefs that you already accept. For example, a drunk taxi driver tells me that there are pink elephants on the highway. This belief does not cohere with my other beliefs that I hold, that elephants are gray, this is not the habitat of an elephant, there is no zoo or circus nearby, and severely intoxicated people have been known to have hallucinations. I reject this belief that there are pink elephants on the highway as false because it doesn't cohere with my other beliefs. If a belief does not cohere with my other beliefs, I toss it out. A criticism of the coherence theory of truth is that with the coherence theory of truth, justification has only to do with the harmony of my beliefs in my mind, and nothing to do with what truly exists in the outside world. Clearly, just because a belief coheres with all your other beliefs, it doesn't make that belief true. For example, Todd's belief he is the President of the United States may cohere with all his other beliefs, but he is clearly not the President of the United States. A further objection is that the coherence theory of truth is viciously circular. So for example, I believe that when I use my eyes, I see the world as it is. This belief is justified by my belief that the many times I've used my eyes, they showed me the world as it really was. And this belief is justified by my belief that when I checked by asking other people, they confirmed that my eyes showed me the world as it really was. And this belief is justified because I believe that I really saw other people confirming what my eyes showed me. And this belief is justified because I believe that when I use my eyes, I see the world as it really is, which is where we started. X justifies Y justifies Z justifies A justifies X, and X justifies Y. It's a viciously circular argument. The pragmatic theory of truth says the truth of an idea depends on the practical difference it makes in our lives, not if it coheres with our other beliefs or if it corresponds to some objective reality. By practical difference, it is meant that believing the idea will lead to satisfactory consequences. Ultimately, the test of an idea is its capacity to solve the particular problems that it addresses. The truth of an idea lies in the capacity to get us through life in a desirable way. With the pragmatic theory of truth, there are no absolute and unchanging truths. A statement is true if it's useful to believe. The pragmatic theory of truth was a U.S. philosophical movement in the writings of C.S. Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. A criticism of the pragmatic theory of truth is that there is a difference between what is true and what we want to be true. However, pragmatism seems to equate the two as equal. To solve our problems with how to make sense of the world, we believed that the world was flat. This belief helped us get through life in a desirable way. So the pragmatic theory of truth seems to imply that when we thought the earth was flat, it was true it was flat. A further objection to the pragmatic theory of truth is that what is useful to one person is subjectively different from another person. People can find conflicting things to both be practical and thus true. If we reject objective truth, then we have to accept every group's claim as equally true as long as those beliefs work towards their desired ends. Thus, if the racist group claims that their race is superior to other races, their claim is as true as our claim that no race is superior to another. Another example would be one group's belief that the Holocaust never happened is as true as another group's belief that the Holocaust did happen, as long as both groups are using that belief for a desired end. A final criticism of pragmatism is that if rejecting pragmatism is useful to us, wouldn't the statement, "pragmatism is true," be a false statement because of its lack of utility? A relevant position impacting all fields of epistemology is skepticism. Skepticism is defined as any position that begins with doubt and demands reasons for believing. There are many different forms of skepticism. Methodological skepticism uses skepticism as a method for inquiry to discover the truth. Limited skepticism entails the conclusion that we can have knowledge in certain areas, while in other areas we cannot. Academic skepticism says that we cannot know anything, but we can know that we lack knowledge of everything. This is a view attributed to Plato's Academy from the 3rd century to the 1st century BC. Radical skepticism says that no knowledge of reality is possible. A form of radical skepticism is Pyrrhonism, which is a form of skepticism that says that we can't even know that we lack knowledge of all things. Arguments have been given in favor of skepticism of much of what we think we know. Most of what we believe we know comes from inductive reasoning, and induction goes beyond what we can observe, where the conclusion is not 100% certain. Induction only gives us probabilities, not certainty. Mere probability is not knowledge. With induction, we take observed realities and project them onto unobserved realities. So an example of a bad inductive argument would be, I've always had brown hair in the past, therefore I'll continue to always have brown hair in the future. An example of a good inductive argument would be, the sun came out every day I have been alive. The sun came out this morning, therefore the sun will come out tomorrow. Those are uncontroversial examples, but what method could be used to decipher what a good induction is from a bad induction? While we can be certain of the conclusion with a sound deductive argument, the premise that a deductive argument derives its conclusion from can't be certain. If all men are mortal, and Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. However, we don't know if Socrates or other men even exist. There are those who would say the external world is unknowable. For all we know, we could be a brain in a vat somewhere, with an evil scientist performing experiments to only make you think that you're listening to this lecture. The senses sometimes deceive us, so they're unreliable. The external world could be an illusion. We can't know that other people even exist. Other people could really be robots. We could be dreaming. We could be hallucinating. Evil demons could be deceiving us into believing an external world exists. We could not truly even have knowledge of the past. The universe could have come into existence 5 minutes ago with false memories given to us. Many criticisms have been made against skepticism. An argument can be made the common sense view that the external world exists is more plausible because it fits with instinctive beliefs and is simpler, that we need to use Occam's razor. The external world being an illusion is needlessly complex. There are those who would argue against skepticism by saying that knowledge does not require absolute certainty. Just because it is possible that I could be in error, it doesn't follow that there are grounds for doubting one's beliefs. The burden of proof should be on the skeptic that the chair I see is not in front of me. The burden of proof should not be on me to prove the chair truly is in front of me. Just because the senses sometimes deceive us, it doesn't follow that we should completely abandon the senses as a way of discovering knowledge. The mere possibility that the senses are deceiving us in a particular instance does not suffice to give us good reason to think they are wrong in this particular instance. We should take our senses as innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. An objection to skepticism is that radical skepticism contradicts itself. The statement, radical skepticism is true, is itself a knowledge claim. We can't say the only truth is there is no truth. There would have to be truths that we would need to know to allow us to come to that conclusion that there is no truth. A religious argument against skepticism is that assuming the existence of God can provide us with justification that we can know reality, especially know the things about the external world. Since God intelligently formed our cognitive faculties and is not a deceiver, we can confidently trust our ability to discover truths concerning reality. A branch within the field of epistemology is religious epistemology. Perhaps few people believe in God based on rational proofs. Perhaps most people who have religious beliefs do not need proof of them any more than they need proof of the existence of their everyday environmental interactions. Many people believe in God due to experiencing a religious dimension to reality, and they believe this unseen reality is deeper and more real than their sensory experiences. They have the feeling of a divine presence, or they have intense religious feelings. Should the burden of proof be on the atheist to prove these experiences of the divine are false, or should the burden of proof be on the theist? Christian philosopher Alvin Plantinga says the burden of proof should be on the atheist that these experiences aren't real. If the atheist can't adequately disprove them, the theist should accept them. Within evidentialism, the justification of a conclusion depends solely on the evidence for it. According to the evidentialist, even if it is true that God exists, one is unjustified or irrational in believing that God exists unless one has evidence supporting that belief. This is because the evidentialist believes that one is rationally justified in believing a proposition to be true only if that proposition is a foundational basic belief or is a non-basic belief based on a basic belief. Since the proposition God exists is not a basic belief, it would be irrational to believe in this proposition apart from rational evidence for its truth. Critiquing evidentialism, Alvin Plantinga says belief in God can be shown to be unjustified, irrational, or unwarranted only if it is shown that theist beliefs are false. Plantinga asked why the proposition God exists can't be itself a basic belief so that no rational evidence is necessary. A quick review of foundationalist epistemology is that basic beliefs can be held without the justification of other beliefs. Non-basic beliefs are beliefs justified by other beliefs. All our knowledge rests on the foundation of basic beliefs. We can have knowledge of non-basic beliefs if the non-basic beliefs are justified by basic beliefs. Plantinga has issue with foundationalists who say that only self-evident statements, like all bachelors are unmarried, and phenomenological statements, like I am experiencing the subjective sensation of a chair, are the only basic beliefs. If we only accepted self-evident or phenomenological statements as basic beliefs, we'd all be irrational. We commonly accept beliefs that are neither self-evident or phenomenological that involve beliefs that can't be proven. An example of such a belief would be that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago with built-in memory traces, food in our stomachs from the breakfasts we never ate, and only the appearance of age. Plantinga thinks that it's not only reasonable to believe that God exists apart from evidence, but also that the theist can know apart from evidence that God exists. Plantinga says that within us, we have a cognitive mechanism, which in a wide variety of circumstances produces in us beliefs about God. Just as perceptual beliefs like there is a tree are not based on arguments from more basic beliefs, but arise in us spontaneously when we are in the circumstances of a tree's appearing to be there, so the belief God exists arises spontaneously in appropriate circumstances, such as moments of guilt and profound gratitude, from the cognitive mechanism that senses the divine. These beliefs that the cognitive mechanism that senses the divine produce give us a basic belief of God's existence. Assuming that our cognitive faculties are functioning appropriately, the more firmly someone holds to the beliefs about God that come to him when he senses the divine, the more justified to that person these beliefs become. Thus, belief in God meets the criteria for knowledge as appropriately justified true belief.
Religious pragmatism falls under the umbrella of the philosophy of pragmatism and involves truth-dependent arguments and truth-independent arguments. Blaise Pascal utilizes his famous argument known as Pascal's wager as a truth-dependent argument. A truth-dependent argument recommends holding a belief because of the great benefits to be gained from holding that belief if it should turn out to be true. Pascal's famous argument, known as Pascal's wager, argued belief in God is pragmatically justified because we have everything to gain and nothing to lose by holding to that belief. If I believe God exists, I can possibly gain an infinite amount of happiness in a heavenly afterlife and only have a finite amount of loss of worldly pleasure. If I believe in God and God does not exist, then I have only suffered a finite loss of earthly pleasure I could have received. If I do not believe and God exists, then I have only experienced a finite earthly pleasure gain, but I missed out on an infinite amount of happiness in heaven. If I do not believe and God does not exist, then all I have received is a finite amount of earthly pleasure gain. So in other words, Pascal's wager argues that since you are going to have to make a choice to believe in God or not, it is wiser to believe in God because you can attain heaven by believing in him if he exists. Even if it ends up God does not exist, it is worth the gamble.
The philosopher William James offers a truth-independent argument. A truth-independent argument recommends holding a belief because of the great benefits to be gained from holding that belief, whether or not it turns out to be true. James believes religious belief is beneficial in this life, regardless of its promises for the next. His studies had convinced him that religious believers are more balanced, happier, and more virtuous than unbelievers. Regardless of religion's truth, then, religious belief is beneficial, and in view of such benefits, pragmatically justified.